Factorizing. We're going to have a look at some special factors. Number 1, an expression in the form of x squared minus y squared is called the difference of two squares. We would have seen this at junior cert level. The difference of two squares has special factors that should be remembered. So if we have a square number, a minus, and a square number, and we want to factorize them, we're going to have the square root of the first term in the front of each bracket and the square root of the second term in the back of each bracket, and we're going to have a plus and a minus. It doesn't matter which way we have the plus or the minus. So this is the format for the difference of two squares, and just to check are we right, we can multiply this out. X by x is x squared, x by minus y is minus xy, y by x is xy, and y by minus y is minus y squared. Xy minus xy and plus xy will cancel, leaving us with the x squared and the minus y squared. So if we start off with x squared minus y squared, which is known as the difference of two squares, we end up with bracket x plus y bracket x minus y bracket. Okay, the second one is where we have x cubed plus y cubed, and this is called the sum of two cubes. So in the last example we looked at the difference of two squares because we had a minus sign for the difference, and in this example we're looking at the sum of two cubes, so we've got a plus sign and cubes. So sum means add. The factors of this expression are verified below. So if we start off with x cubed plus y cubed, what we do is we get the cube root of the first term, and that goes in the front of the first bracket, and we get the cube root of the second term, and that goes in the back of the first bracket with an add in between. And then in our second bracket we can get the cube root of our first term and then square it, and that goes in the front of our second bracket. We can get the cube root of our second term and then square it, and that goes in the back of our first bracket. And then we can get the cube root of our first term, the cube root of our second term, multiply them together and stick a minus in front, and that goes in the middle of our second bracket. Now if I want to multiply these out just to check am I right, x by x squared is x cubed, x by minus xy is going to be minus x squared y, x by y squared is going to be xy squared, y by x squared is going to be x squared y by minus xy is going to be minus xy squared, and y by y squared is going to be y cubed. Now the minus x squared y and the plus x squared y will cancel, and the plus x squared y and the minus x squared y will also cancel, and that leaves me with x cubed plus y cubed. So if we have an expression in the form of x cubed plus y cubed, which is the sum of two cubes, we factorize it into this format. And the third of our special factors is called the difference of two cubes, similar to our second one, which was the sum of two cubes. Now we have the difference of two cubes, so we have a minus. So it's in the form of x cubed minus y cubed, and the factors of this expression are verified below. So if we start off with x cubed minus y cubed, we end up with bracket x minus y bracket x squared plus xy plus y squared bracket. So what this means is we get the cube root of the first term, and that goes in the front of the first bracket. We get the cube root of the second term, and that goes in the back of the first bracket, and then we have a minus. Then we get the cube root of the first term and square it, that goes in the front of our second bracket. We get the cube root of our last term and square it, and that goes in the back of our second bracket. And then we get the cube root of our first term and the cube root of our second term. We multiply them together and we stick a plus in front, and that goes in the center of our second bracket. So this is the format that we need to follow when we are factorizing this difference of two cubes. So I'm just going to multiply this out to verify that we get back to this. So x by x squared is x cubed, x by plus xy is going to be x squared y. X by y squared is going to be xy squared. Minus y by x squared is going to be minus x squared y. Minus y by xy is going to be minus xy squared. And minus y by minus y squared is going to be minus y cubed. And then we can see that the x squared y and the minus x squared y will cancel. Also see that the xy squared and the minus xy squared will cancel. And that leaves us with x cubed minus y cubed. So we really want to learn these off for Leaving Cert. The first one you should already know from Junior Cert, but the sum of two cubes and the difference of two cubes, you should get very familiar with this format. Okay, so we have three examples that we want to factorize. 4x squared minus 25, x cubed plus 8y cubed, 2x cubed minus 18xy squared. So for each of these, we're either going to use the difference of two squares, the sum of two cubes, or the difference of two cubes. So it's first important to identify which method we're going to use. Well, in our first term, in our first expression, we have a minus. So it has to be either the first one or the last one. It couldn't be the sum of two cubes because it has a minus. So we want to have a look and see what our terms are. Well, 4 is a square number, x squared is a square number, and 25 is a square number. So for the first one, we're going to use the difference of two squares. So what we have to do is open up two sets of brackets. And we're going to have a plus in the middle of one and a minus in the middle of the other, just like we have in our formula up here. And then what we had to do to go from x squared to x was we had to square root the x squared to get x. So we're going to square root 4x squared. And the square root of 4x squared is going to be 2x. So the square root of 4 is 2. The square root of x squared is x. So the 2x goes in the front of both brackets because we had an x in the front of both of those. Then we have to square root the 25. And the square root of 25 is going to be 5. So 5 goes in the back of both of those because we have the y in the back of both of those brackets. So to factorize 4x squared minus 25, we end up with 2x plus 5 multiplied by 2x minus 5. We can multiply this out to check if we get back here. Okay, in number 2 we have x cubed plus 8y cubed. So it can only be the sum of two cubes because we have a plus sign in between them. But let's just check, are each term a cube term? So x cubed is definitely a cube. And 8 is a cube because 2 by 2 by 2 is 8. So 2 cubed is 8. And y cubed is definitely a cube. So yes, we can use the sum of two cubes. So what we're going to do is get the cube root of each term. So as we can see here, we started with x cubed and then we had x in the front of our bracket. So we have to get the cube root of our first term. The cube root of x cubed is just going to be x. So we're going to have x in the front of our bracket. And then we had y cubed and y. So we have to get the cube root of whatever our y term is. And in this case, the cube root of 8y cubed is going to be 2y. Because 2y by 2y by 2y will end up giving us 8y cubed. So the cube root of 8y cubed is going to be 2y. And that is going to go in the back of our first bracket. So we have x plus 2y in our first bracket. Now, following our formula, in the front of our second bracket, we have our first term squared. So our first term we would have got the cube root of, and then we have to square it. So the cube root of our first term was x, because that's what we had in the front of our bracket, and x squared is just going to be x squared. So this x squared is also x squared in our example. Okay, then in the middle of our second bracket, we have minus xy. So what that means is we would have got the cube root of the first term, the cube root of the second term, multiplied them together because they're stuck together here, multiplied them together and made them a minus. So the cube root of x cubed is x, and the cube root of 8y cubed is 2y. So it's going to be x multiplied by 2y, which is going to be 2xy, and we have a minus in front. Okay, and then we have y squared at the back. And how we get that is we need to get the cube root of our second term, and we need to square it. So our second term was 8y cubed, and we got the cube root of 8y cubed to be 2y. So 2y is going to have to be squared, and 2y squared is going to be 2 squared, which is 4, and y squared, which is y squared. So if we want to factorize x cubed plus 8y cubed, we end up with x plus 2y multiplied by x squared minus 2xy plus 4y squared. So for this one, we use the sum of two cubes. Okay, for our last one, we have 2x cubed minus 18xy squared. So we know we're not going to use the sum of two cubes because we have a minus. So it's either going to be the difference of two squares or the difference of two cubes. Now, 2 is not a square number, and it's not a cube number either. And 18 is not a square number, and it's not a cube number either. So what we're going to have to do is we're going to have to factorize first of all by taking out the highest common factor of each. And then we can apply one of our formulas. So the highest common factor is going to be 2x. And 2x divides into 2x cubed and leaves us with x squared. And 2x divides into minus 18xy squared and leaves us with minus 9y squared. And we can multiply this out to check, are we right? 2x by x squared is 2x cubed. 2x by minus 9y squared is minus 18xy squared. Okay, so now we have a look at what's inside our brackets. We have a minus, and we have a square number, and we have a square number and another square number. So we're going to use the difference of two squares. So we're going to keep the 2x in front of the bracket because that was our HCF, so that needs to stay outside the bracket for the whole time. So the difference of two squares is this format here, where we have two sets of brackets. One is a plus, one is a minus. And in the front of each of those brackets is the square root of our first term. And in the back of each of those brackets is the square root of our second term. So the square root of our first term, which is x squared, is going to be x. So we've got x in the front of each bracket. And the square root of our second term, well, first of all, the square root of 9 is going to be 3. And the square root of y squared is going to be y. So 3y is the square root of our second term. And that's going to go in the back of each of our brackets. So we have 2x, which is our highest common factor. And then our difference of two squares is factorized as x plus 3y times x minus 3y. And again, if we multiply this out, we'll get back to 2x cubed minus 18xy squared. So it's important to get very, very, very familiar with these formulas.